hall and everyone who is watching around the world, who have worked so long and so hard to persuade the State Department to remove the MEK from the foreign terrorist list. You were told that the State Department would never change its mind and that the cause was hopeless. Well, you never lost hope. You were not intimidated, you were not discouraged, and you certainly weren't silenced. And because of your patience and persistence, justice prevailed. Congratulations. Madam Rajavi, when I told my daughter I was coming over to see you, she asked me to send her congratulations and her very best wishes. And so you see, you're not just inspiring all of us here in this hall this evening. You're inspiring a young generation of Americans who are learning for the first time of your courage and your commitment to freedom and democracy. And I know that all of them are so eager to welcome you. Now, delisting was a great victory, but our challenges are not yet over. So I just want to talk very briefly about two additional challenges that we face, one longer term and the other short term. The long-term challenge is replacing the current regime in Tehran with one that respects the human rights and dignity of the Iranian people, one that does not export violence and terror to its neighbors, and one that does not threaten U.S. national security. Now, how can we do this? Different American administrations have encouraged the Iranian regime to change its behavior, sometimes by proposing multilateral talks, sometimes by bilateral talks, and sometimes even by writing personal letters to the rulers of Tehran. As we know, all of these attempts have failed. Another way forward, having the United States support the people of Iran and the Iranian resistance as the vanguard to bring about fundamental change in Iran. The MEK is a driving force for this change because it has patiently and relentlessly worked for regime change in Iran. It is the only organized opposition. It is part of a larger coalition with other organizations and individuals and representatives of religious and national minorities. It has a network inside Iran and has produced a progressive, humanistic, and democratic platform for the future. But there is another, more immediate challenge that we can tackle right away, and that is to ensure that your friends and relatives still at Camps Ashraf and Liberty are protected while they remain inside Iraq. This means that the United States needs to use its leverage with Iraq to ensure that the residents of Liberty have firm guarantees for their safety and security. Any harm to the residents of Camp Liberty would tarnish and dishonor America's reputation. It would also tarnish and dishonor the UN's reputation. We need to convince the UNHCR to recognize Camp Liberty as a refugee camp, which will help ensure that the residents will be safe until the day they can leave Iraq. That is the immediate task we now need to turn our attention to. In fact, many of us have already started, continuing to urge the State Department and the UN to do the right thing. Like our effort to delist the MEK, this one may also be difficult. It may take some time. It will take more of the patience and persistence that you have already demonstrated to the world. I want to share with you the words of a famous American who also knew something about patience and persistence, about moral courage in the face of intimidation, and about the long struggle to overcome injustice, and ultimately to triumph. In March of 1965, Martin Luther King spoke at the state capitol in Montgomery, Alabama. The third and final Freedom March had just been completed from Selma to Montgomery, Alabama, on behalf of voting rights for African Americans. These marches marked an emotional high watermark of the civil rights movement. The images of Alabama police beating the nonviolent protesters were televised all over the country and all over the world and greatly influenced public opinion. On that day in Alabama, Dr. King said, "I must admit to you that there are still some difficult days ahead. I know you are asking today, how long will it take? Somebody's asking, how long will justice be crucified and truth bear it? I come to say to you this afternoon, however difficult the moment, however frustrating the hour, it will not be long, because truth crushed to earth will rise again." How long? How long? Not long, because no lie can live forever. How long? Not long, because you shall reap what you sow. How long? Not long, because the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. We know that Dr. King was right, and ultimately the cause he fought for won out. The arc of the moral universe bends towards justice. It bends towards you, members of the MEK, and it especially bends towards those brave people, your friends and relatives, still at Camp Liberty. How long until they are free? Not long. Thank you very much.
Linda Chavez is a former White House Director of Public Liaison and a U.S. expert in the UN Subcommission on Human Rights. Her credibility and her voice for all of us in repeal of the FTO was essential, and we are very grateful to her. Linda.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. It is a great honor for me to be here, but it is also a very humbling experience to be on the same podium with so many illustrious Americans, Europeans, Latin Americans, and others from around the world. I think one of the things that was most humbling is to be asked to be here as part of the celebration of the victory of delisting the MEK on the terrorist list in the United States. But I think one thing we have to remember is that as great a victory as that, and it was accomplished only because there was bipartisan support in the United States, as great a victory as that was, it is simply a means to an end. As long as there is not freedom for the people of Iran, we have not achieved our aim. I am confident that with the leadership of the PMOI and with the leadership of Madam Rajavi, that goal will in fact be a reality, and it will happen soon. But it will not happen unless there is support from the democracies around the world. We have seen a great blossoming of freedom and a yearning for democracy throughout the Arab world, throughout Africa, throughout the entire world. But one of the things that we have also seen is that you can have an election, but you may not bring true democracy to a country if you do not have the fundamentals of democracy. Democracy is about more than simple elections. It is about the rule of law. It is about the rights of the individual. It is about equality for all persons, both the majority and the minority. It is about the idea that all of us are created equal in the eyes of God, and we are all endowed by that Creator with equal and fundamental rights. And that is what Mrs. Rajavi has been fighting for in the resistance movement, and that is what the people of Iran deserve. It is time for my government to give up the notion of engagement. You cannot engage with tyranny. You cannot engage with those who would repress their people. The time for engagement is over, and the time for support for democracy of the people of Iran is now. One of the things that has been most striking about the regime in Iran and the mullahs who control that regime is their treatment of half of their population. A country can be judged by how it treats its women. And a country that represses the freedom, that treats women as if they are chattel without any rights whatsoever, is an illegitimate government and an illegitimate regime. And when we look to see how that regime will be replaced, what a fitting irony if the president-elect of the Council of Iranian Resistance, who is a woman, does not replace those mullahs in Iran. That is what we want to see. But while we are on that path, we must remember the 3,000 people who are still captive in Camp Liberty, a camp that should not even have the word liberty in its name. The people of Camp Liberty are not free, and until the United Nations does not recognize their rights as refugees, they should be recognized. It should be the position of the United States government to demand at the UN that the UN High Commissioner for Refugees be put in charge of the fate of the people in Camp Liberty. We must continue to carry on this fight. And this fight must lead to regime change in Iran. And it is those in this room who are the seeds of that freedom. I hope that the next time we meet will not be in Paris, but in Tehran. Thank you very much.